Welcome. I'm Halcyon, and this is Hug Nation. Last week we talked about the suicide deaths of several famous people, one of them being Anthony Bourdain. And in the wake of that announcement and the grieving that people were doing, I noticed a number of posts from people that could not accept that someone with that kind of power and influence and success would do something like that. And somebody posted last night a video of his girlfriend, Asia Argento. And it was a video of her on stage at an award show being very bold in her Me Too movement accusations and talk to Harvey Weinstein and other men in the room that are a part of this problem. And it was like badass, and it was bold, and it was harsh. And so this person posted it saying, this is why the Illuminati or the Hollywood elite killed him, is because his connection to his girlfriend, who is rocking the boat of this Hollywood conspiracy world. The same conspiracy world that is filled with child pornography rings and pizza gates and false flag, fake school shootings, and all these things that just below the surface of reality is this lizard, alien-connected, Rockefeller-influenced regime that's puppeteering the world. And for a moment, I see this video and I think, wow, that's a good point. I'm sure there are very powerful people that are upset by women such as this that are rocking the boat. And I start to question, look at all of these famous people, that why would they do it? Why would Chester Bennington and Chris Cornell, and why would these people do that? And each one of those, I heard some crazy story about how they were just about to come out about child pornography rings in Hollywood, or some story about why they were a target. And I started to kind of go in oh yeah, wow, this is really hard. Suddenly my worldview is unraveling. And then 30 seconds later, I see a link to an article about Anthony and Asia and the ending of their relationship and the photographs that were in the media right before his death of her with looked very much like a new lover. And it was incredible to me how quickly this one piece of data, this one evidence of a strong woman speaking on stage and her connection to someone who's now dead. 1 second, it was evidence of a conspiracy. And then as soon as a little bit more details came out, it became evidence of a suicide. The same thing, the connection to this woman. Once it turned out that there could be this grief and despair in a breakup, much different story than him being punished for a relationship with her. And it just, I kind of was like, that was wild what my brain just did. I totally disregarded and ignored all the other data that I had heard that day. Earlier in the day, a friend of mine had sent me a bunch of links to quotes from Anthony Bourdain about his growing despair about the world and his growing feeling of overwhelmness from the degree of tragic cruelty that is inflicted upon innocent people in the world. And I was like, I already had this body of evidence that was pretty strong showing this is a guy who struggled with stuff, and it's not a crazy jump. But as soon as I got pushed in the direction of conspiracy, I was covered in grease and sliding down. Whoa! And I'm someone who's pretty guarded about conspiracy theory stuff. Which isn't to say that you should always assume that what you see in the news is true. Our government has done shitty stuff. They have assassinated people. They have had fake news. They have covered up. They have had coups. They've had false flag, events to influence regimes, and who knows what the incentive for all of it was. But yes, terrible things, incredible corruption has happened. And so it's not an insane leap of faith to think maybe more cruelty and cover-ups and deception is happening. But it's also not always the truth. You can't just assume that if it's possible, it's probable. And I think it's one of those times where it's good to be aware of cognitive bias and good to be aware of how the brain works. And if you're unfamiliar with the term cognitive bias, go to Wikipedia or just type it into Google and learn about all the types of cognitive bias. I think cognitive bias should be taught in high school. If you do not understand the way the brain has tendencies to affect the way you see information, you are a victim to people who do get it and can trick you into believing things, adjusting the way that information is presented. Every documentary is presented in a way that sways you. Every pickup artist has ways of putting information to get you to go to bed with them. Salespeople have ways of adjusting things and preying on these tendencies. The one that is in play here, I think, is what's it called? Confirmation bias, where you will look for evidence of things you already believe. So if you think the government is corrupt and is out to get us, then the minute somebody mentions a piece of data that backs that up, that's what you see. That's, in that moment, I totally forgot all the data I had earlier in the day, the words from the man who was dead, and instead, all I could see was this juicy story of conspiracy. And if you can be aware of that, you can also hear people better and understand why you can't be heard as well by people. And you can understand how people aren't necessarily stupid, but they are trapped in their own cognitive bias. Biases? Biases. One of the reasons why I really try to cultivate such a deep sense of humility is because the more I study the way the mind works and am aware of the way my mind works, the more I know it can't be trusted. And we are victims to our own experiences. We are susceptible to seeing what we want to see or don't want to see, but are attracted to. And that can get really dangerous. And as I was sliding into that conspiracy theory stuff, I had this kind of a self-terror of like, oh my gosh, I see how this can become an addictive, like a wound you can't stop picking at. And it also made me had this compassion for people that are caught up in that and live in this world of massive distrust, to the point that they will harass, the families of people that were killed in school shootings because they believed that it wasn't real, that it was a hoax. So, you don't have to believe me. I'm not sure I would, but I would hold everyone to that same doubt or discernment. And also to be aware of when you are swayed by aspects of truth that that you may not be aware of. That being said, this also can be a tool for your happiness. Because if you start looking for the good in people, if you start looking for examples of your partner being wonderful, you will start to see the wonderfulness in people, in the world, in your relationship. Because that's what your brain does. Your partner, yes, they left dirty dishes in the sink. And they also cooked you dinner last night. I don't know what they did. But you've got these, if you shouldn't be keeping score, but if you are keeping score, you've got 2 lists. And the more you keep score, the more you're going to notice the negative stuff. If you instead go, I'm only going to keep scores of pluses. I'm only going to just keep being aware of all the wonderful things about them. You will start to see them as a more wonderful person. Same is true with yourself. Same is true with the world. That's why gratitude journals are the #1 recommendation from everyone if you want to change your perspective and make yourself a happier person. Start to notice what's good, and then your brain starts to notice what's good. If you feel a duty to pay attention to everything negative in the world will be negative. It sucks. And that's why the whole institution of news is such a scour on our society, because the news, for the most part, with the exception of like, oh, we caught a cat out of a tree, or hey, there's a chili cook-off this weekend, most of the news is what went badly, what broke, what died, what terrible thing, because it preys on the way our brains work and our cognition. And then the narrative of the news is actually what's going wrong. And the percentage of the world that's broken, instead of being the 1% of brokenness that is reported, we see that as the narrative of the world. And an undisciplined mind is far easier swayed to seeing that 1% negativity than they are to seeing the miracles around us, the fantastic things about yourself, the amazing things about your partner, or your friends, or your job, or your affluence. That training, unfortunately, is not something that you can just like tattoo on you and be done with it. It is a daily practice. It is a lifelong practice. And that's why we meet here every week. So thank you for being a part of this practice for me, for helping remind me of the amazing people in the world like you. All of us doing our best to be our truth, to shine our light, and to make the world a better place. Thank you. I love you. Let's have ourselves a hug. Grab yourself by the shoulders. And no matter what you might see in the news or in your Facebook feed, no matter what terrible things or the examples of cruelty, let's remember that these are tiny details. We're focusing on the imperfections in a grand masterpiece of a planet. That isn't to say we shouldn't spend time trying to fill in the cracks or heal the sicknesses, but it also doesn't mean that we should ignore the beauty, the love, the connections, not feel the oneness. And so for in this moment, let's feel that oneness. Let's let go of our egos and our thoughts and this body itself, and just let our energy be part of this one massive system of this planet. And as we take 3 breaths together, we'll sink into that oneness. In through the nose. On behalf of Grandpa Caleb and all the Love Warriors, happy Hug Nation. I love you. Thank you so much for watching. Want more? There's over 1,000 videos on the YouTube Hug Nation channel. If you want to support me in my work, you can do so at patreon.com/halcyon. If you want to go really deep, I'm taking a few more coaching clients, so reach out, send me a note. I love you.